Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Snowbeck. Today we are going to do Unit 6, Lesson 5, and we're going to do more trigonometry. And today we're going to learn about a thing called inverse functions, which is going to be kind of cool. But I wanted to remind you before we get started, remember that little thing called SOHCAHTOA. And remember what it stands for. It stands for sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So if you can remember SOHCAHTOA, then you'll have a lot easier time with this trigonometry. To find a missing angle in a right triangle, you can use inverse trigonometric functions. The expression sine to the negative 1x is read the inverse sine of x. So this is inverse sine when you see that little negative 1 there. You can also have the inverse of cosine or the inverse of tangent. So when you see that little exponent of negative 1, it means inverse. Let's try number 1. Find the measure of angle A. So think about it. Up until now, you have not had a way to find that angle measure. We have never learned a method that would allow us to do that. But trigonometry will allow us to find the measure of angle A. So you start the same way. You start at the angle you're working with, and in this case, we're starting with angle A. And then you figure out which two sides have writing on them. Well, the 18 is opposite of angle A. Remember, we're working from angle A. The 27 is across from the 90, so that's the hypotenuse. Now is when you think about SOHCAHTOA. And you have to pick the one that has the O and the H. So look at your choices, find the O and the H. And you'll see it's right here with So the S stands for sine. So you're going to do the sine. Now normally after the trig function, after the word sine, you'd put the angle. Since we don't know the angle, we'll just put the letter A representing that angle. And then it equals, and then remember the middle letter goes on top, the bottom letter the last letter goes on bottom. And so opposite goes on the top, 18. And hypotenuse goes on the bottom, 27. Now, what we're supposed to do is find the measure of angle A. So we have to get A by itself. So to get A by itself, we have to get rid of the word sine. To get rid of the word sine, you do a thing called inverse sine. But remember, when you're working with equations, whatever you do on one side of the equation, you have to do on the other side as well. Now on the left side, the inverse sine and the sine will cancel out. And so you'll just have A. On the right side, you have the inverse sine of 18 divided by 27. Now grab your calculators. So your calculator has to be in degree mode, which it should be if you used it yesterday on 6.4. So now what you're going to do is see above the sine key, like if your calculator has the sine key, above it, it's going to say inverse sine. It's going to have a little sine to the negative 1. So what you have to do is you have to hit second, and then sine, and then it's probably going to give you a parenthesis, and then 18 divided by 27. You can close the parenthesis if you want, and then hit equals. When I typed that into my calculator, I got 41.8. So angle A is 41.8 degrees. So the rule of thumb is this: whenever you're looking for an angle, that's when you're going to have to use the inverse functions. Number 2, find the measure of angle G. Okay, so I go to angle G. Two sides have writing on them, so I figure out which two sides they are. Well, the one across from the 90, that's the hypotenuse. The 5 is the adjacent. See how the 5 and the 13 are right next to angle G, but 13's already the hypotenuse? That means 5 is going to be the adjacent side. So Think about SOHCAHTOA. I always like to write it out, it helps me. So I have the A and the H, adjacent and hypotenuse, A and H. They're right here, they're with cosine. The C stands for cosine. I only use the first 3 letters, I don't have to write out the whole word, but I say cosine of, and now it should be the angle. So we don't know how big the angle is, so we'll just use the letter. And then adjacent goes on top, so 5. Hypotenuse goes on bottom, so 13. Now remember what we just talked about. To get G by itself, we have to get rid of the word cosine. And to get rid of the word cosine, you have to do the inverse cosine. It's like the opposite of cosine. And when you do the inverse of cosine, it'll cancel out. Be sure to do it to both sides of your equation. So then what happens is I have G, because these canceled out, equals inverse cosine 5 divided by 13. And now I grab my calculator, and you're going to have to type in second cosine so that you get the inverse cosine, right? So type in second cosine and then 5 divided by 13 and hit equals. And it should say G is 67.38 or 67.4 degrees if we round it to the 10th. All right, do you feel ready? If you feel like maybe you could do one by yourself, why don't you pause the video and try number 3, and then when you're done, unpause the video and see if you got it right. So go ahead, pause the video. So we're going to try to find the measure of angle B in number 3. The 14 is opposite, the 8 is adjacent. The hypotenuse is the side we're not using, it's the long side between B and A. Now think about SOHCAHTOA. And you have to pick one of these, and you want to pick the one that has the O and the A. And the O and the A go with TOA. So T stands for tangent. So you write tangent and then the angle. So B, since we don't know the angle, equals, and then it's opposite over adjacent, so 14 over 8. To solve this, you're going to have to get rid of that word tangent, so you have to take the inverse tangent. Do it on both sides of your equal sign. These cancel out. So we end up with just plain B over there on the left, and then on the right we have inverse tangent of 14 divided by 8. So then when I type that in, second tan, 14 divided by 8, I get angle B is approximately 60.25, so 60.3 degrees. If the number that comes after 2 is 5 or higher, remember you have to round up. So 60.3 degrees. Now number 4 says, using that same diagram, find angle A. There's a couple things you could do. Remember how the angles in a triangle add up to 180? So if you just take 180 and you subtract, let me show you, this corner is 90, right? So I'm going to subtract the 90, and then this corner that we just found is 60.3. If I subtract both of those from 180, so 180 minus 90 minus 60.3, 29.7 degrees is left. So angle A is 29.7. Okay, on number 5, I'm going to teach you one more thing that's a little different with trigonometry. So it says solve for x. So this is not going to be an inverse because we're not solving for an angle. But here is our angle, and we start the same way. We see across here is our opposite side, and then the x is across from the 90. So that's your hypotenuse. Next, what would you do? If you're thinking about SOHCAHTOA, you're right, you're going to pick one of those with the O and the H. So you're going to pick SO. S stands for sine. Sine of what? 21 equals, and now is where the new part comes in. So you have to be careful. Remember, it's opposite on top, hypotenuse on bottom. So it's 11 over x. Now yesterday, this never happened. Yesterday, the x was always on the top. So to solve these, it's a little more complicated. What you want to do is always multiply by whatever's on the bottom. In this case, we're going to have to multiply by x. So on the right, the x's cancel out. So we have x sine 21 equals 11. But remember, we're trying to solve it for x. So it's like x times sine of 21. So to undo a times, we divide. It's like the opposite of multiplying. So whatever you do on one side of your fraction, do on the other. These sines of 21 will cancel out. And we'll have x equals 11 divided by sine 21. And then you can type that into your calculator. So grab your calculator, type in 11 divided by sine 21. And x turns out to be 30.69 or 30.7, and there's not a label. Let's try another one. Any gymnasts in class? I was never a gymnast, but I got to do a gymnastics unit in middle school, or we called it junior high, every year, and I always loved doing the springboard. You'd go running up and then bounce off of this springboard, and then you'd get to try the vault. It was so cool. Or you'd get to use the springboard and try to land on the balance beam. Kind of tricky. I give a lot of credit to the gymnasts. Okay. So this springboard Katie uses in her gymnastics class has 6-inch coils and forms an angle of 14.5 degrees with the base. About how long is the springboard? Okay, so what we want to find out is how long is this part? How long is the actual blue board here? That's what we want. Now see how this is 6 over here? We're going to move that over here as well. So this is also 6. This, we're going to complete our triangle. This angle over here is 14.5. You can kind of see the arrow going in there. And our 90-degree angle, which is really hard to tell it's 90 degrees from the picture, but in real life, I think you'd see it, is right there. See where I drew in that 90-degree corner? So think about this triangle. We can use SOHCAHTOA. So across from our angle is the 6. So the 6 is opposite. It's kind of hard to read. Opposite. And the x is across from the 90. So that's the hypotenuse. So again, kind of hard to tell in the picture, but you're going to think about SOHCAHTOA. And you're going to pick the one with the O and the H. So see if you can pick the one. Yep, you're going to pick sine. So then you're going to do sine of, what's the angle? Never use 90, always use the other one. So 14.5. And then it equals opposite over hypotenuse. So 6 over x. Ooh, this is one where x is on the bottom again. So what do? We're going to multiply by x. Whatever's on the bottom of the fraction, multiply by that. That's going to clear out that bottom x. So now we have x sine 14.5 equals 6. Remember, we're trying to solve it for x. So right now it's x times sine 14.5. So to get rid of that, you're going to have to divide by sine 14.5. Okay, so then these cancel. So we have x equals 6 divided by sine 14.5. And this is where you can grab your calculators. So then you would type in 6 divided by sine 14.5, and we get 23.96. Now it says about how long is the springboard, so I would say it's approximately 24 inches, which is about 2 feet long. I think in real life it's actually longer than 2 feet, more like 4 feet probably, but whatever, we'll go with the question. Number 7, this is our last one. Kay is standing near a 200-foot-high radio tower. Use the information in the figure to determine how far Kay is from the top of the tower. So imagine she's standing here, right? Here's Kay, and we want to know how far is she from the top of the tower. So we want to find x. Okay, I want you to pause the video. See if you can set this one up. You're going to use SOHCAHTOA. Here's your angle. Remember, never use the 90, so we're going to use 49. The x is the hypotenuse. It's across from the 90. The 200 is the opposite. O and H. Think about SOHCAHTOA. Okay, O and H, you should pick sine. So sine, remember, then it's the angle, so sine of 49 equals opposite over hypotenuse. X is on the bottom. So you're going to multiply by x. Then you're going to have to divide by sine 49 to get x by itself. Whatever you do on one side, do on the other side. These cancel out. So x is going to equal 200 divided by sine 49. Can we type that in our calculator? Yep. So you go 200 divided by sine 49. And x is 265.00. So I'll just say 265 feet. That's how far K is from the top of the tower. That wraps up Unit 6, Lesson 5. So now would you guys please try the practice? Unit 6, Practice 5. Let us know if you have questions. Have a great day.